Right.
Called Tony Robinson.
Well, he's a lovely man.
He is a
and
lovely
to be
man,
honest with
Sir
you,
Tony.
I was
Is he-
the
is he
reason
so?
the reason I was talking about, I wouldn't have even known it was Tony Robinson. We were talking about Sunday night telly when I was a kid. Basically, today's podcast is about being bored, right? And what it is, and are we like, we're going to explore it. We think it's very interesting. And I basically said, well, like all of the things that I used to be bored by when I was a kid, and then I listed some things off.
And do you know what the first thing was that Sam listed? Songs of praise.
Songs of praise. Which, look, I have nothing. I enjoy a good hymn.
Who was the geezer that used to do that?
I don't know.
Was it Harry Seacombe?
I don't know. But I mean, I like a good sing song, but there was something about, I think maybe it was because every day at school, started and we had to sing hymns and all that. And I think maybe Sunday afternoon, I was like, some hymns I liked, but not them ones.
To be fair, I think the whole, God, is this a really controversial subject? I think they could make church more entertaining.
It's got nothing to do. I mean, it wasn't really, if I was just being honest, though, as a kid. Well, actually, what I listed was things that I found boring as a child. It's interesting, right? For me, it was like scenery, Sunday night telly, some wildlife programs. Funny, as a kid, I think when I was a little kid, I was mad into animals and that. And then later on, it was like, oh, boring. But now I love it. And it's like, actually, if I reflect on what was going on, why I was bored, I wasn't connected to that thing. Now, other people may have been very connected to that thing. So the question is, well, what even is boredom? Particularly on a journey in and around alcohol, right? Because a lot of us were like, I'm bored. This is when I used to drink. But is it actually boredom? Or is it something else? So interesting, right?
It's very interesting. And I think some of this is born out of when you stop drinking and it's been a big feature in your life for so long, you've suddenly got these expanses of time to fill or to not fill. You've got these expanses of time, which include not just the time that you used to spend drinking, but the time that you spent thinking about drinking, contemplating drinking, trying not to drink, wondering whether you might drink. Like it really adds up, and people find that, like so many times we hear in these programs that we coach in, like, well, I've got all this time. Like, what do I do with myself? So, I think that can open up a space for, like, people will go one of two ways. Usually, they'll either go down the boredom route on board, or they'll go down the, wow, this is exciting. I can do all of these things that I haven't done before. Yeah,
maybe. I mean, maybe it's funny, right? Because often, I guess that feeling of I'm bored is maybe I don't know how to just be with myself. Well, I haven't learned that. It's in one way, it's like kind of impossible for us not to just be. It's the one thing we're always doing, but we've often had something on top of it in form of like thinking about something or drinking, or we're at work, and it's one of those things. If we've got things to distract ourselves, even if it's a job that we're not that invested in, and we're kind of doing those things, and then we get home, and that's the time when we used to open a few tins or whatever, and then we're not doing that anymore, then it's easier to be like, oh, I'm bored, when really what we might be saying is, I don't know how to sit, I don't know how to be, I don't know how to chill out. There's a whole host of things it could be, but I think possibly we'll loop full circle on this, but something to really consider the whole way through this discussion is, well, what is boredom? What's the message it's giving me? What can I learn from this, and what's going on beneath it? Because there's going to be loads of stuff that we did talk a bit about, the kind of neurochemical stuff that's going on when we first stop drinking, which I think is important to understand. But then there's a whole host of other stuff as well.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start there, and then we can talk about some of the avenues that we might go down.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, ultimately, if you're going to bring a drug as a chemical messenger, right? So if you think about it, we often don't really slow down to think about these things, but any drug that you bring into your body, it's a chemical messenger. It's signaling to your neurochemistry, to your the things that the neuromodulators and the neurotransmitters in your body, it's telling them to behave differently to how they normally behave. And your body loves homeostasis. It loves balance. The whole job is there's a certain way that I want things to be. And I'm going to constantly be in a state of flux in order to try and be there, homeostasis, balance. So if you bring in something like, now look, it's so complicated. And every time, often when I talk about things like this, people bring in oh yeah, but it's not that, it's this element. And it really is. There's so many different things happening in our body when we drink alcohol. And actually, it is a very complicated set of things that are happening, particularly with alcohol, more so than other drugs. It's affecting you and operating on a lot of systems. Many other drugs are much more simple to understand their interaction on the body and your neurochemistry. But alcohol is very complicated because of the process, how long it takes to go through your body, the impact it's having on many of your different organs in your body, how it gets converted from alcohol to acetaldehyde and then acetate. I'm probably going to say some of these things wrong, so forgive me. But all that stuff is so complex. But at the dopamine level, you're effectively drinking something that's increasing the amount of dopamine in your system. And when you do that, your body goes, whoa, there's a lot of dopamine here. Something's not quite right. So it downregulates the amount of dopamine receptors in your brain so that you're not feeling that dopamine as strongly. And some people might talk about this as, part of the tolerance cycle and all these different things. But ultimately, that is your body's way of protecting itself. So over time, the mad thing is that if you're drinking every day or every other day or even just a few times a week, the amount of dopamine receptors in your brain is going to get downregulated. So normal things that used to feel a certain way because dopamine is on the reward circuit and the learning circuits, they just don't feel the same anymore. So from reading a book to going to the cinema to hanging out with Pat or whatever it might be, if alcohol's not in the picture, it will just feel a bit like flat. It won't feel like it used to. And people often kind of report, it's just lost its shine. And then alcohol, we don't know it's happening, but it gets moved up the hierarchy of need, and it becomes like an experience that we're craving because it's the one time where we're getting, a dopamine hit, where we start to feel different. Now, I mean, the long-term effect of that is actually quite scary because it keeps on going to the point where alcohol, the dopamine release doesn't sort of make you feel better than your baseline. It starts to just bring you to baseline, and then it goes below that. And like the long-term stories we won't really cover today. But I mean, essentially, so when you first stop drinking, there is going to be a resetting and a recalibration of your neurotransmitters. Dopamine, other ones too. And that's going to take a little while. 30 days is a powerful length of time and beyond. So allowing for that's powerful. And Ellie, I know you've spoken about this a lot, but that childlike joy, that sparkle, that starts to just come back in and flow back into our lives. And over the months and weeks that follow it, we really start to realize like, whoa, all these things that I wasn't enjoying anymore are amazing again.
Yeah. And that's everything from some of the activities. And like I used to be a big reader, and towards the end of my drinking career, I didn't read anymore. There were all sorts of things, actually, all sorts of activities that I used to enjoy that all became casualties in the wake of drinking. And so those sorts of things, like rediscovering the joy of those things and the pleasure that you can derive from those things once this recalibration takes place, that's a wondrous thing. But it's not just those things. It's like the joy from like just all of the small moments. Like I remember early-ish on in sobriety, looking out of the window on a morning as it's the dawn rising, and just being like, wow, like that's beautiful. And I was like, who the hell am I? Who is this person? And I like this person. This is really cool. I've sat there before and like looked at blades of grass like, whoa, like that's amazing. Like contemplating these really small, seemingly small things. And that coupled with the the coming back online of your senses, it just this is why I like when Michael Singer talks about like we live in Disneyland. It's like we've got just this incredible planet that we inhabit, and all of the potential for like infinite potential for experiences, not judging them one way or the other, but just that every experience we have makes our lives richer. But I think the key point is, and this comes back to something that you said just before, we should have pressed record earlier because it was really great when you were saying it.
Are you going to say that I can't recreate it? Great. It's going to be rubbish this time round.
You will. You'll do it justice. It's this whole point about, well, am I being present to my life? Am I present for it or not? And when earlier on, we looked at the definition of boredom, and the first definition was crap, but then we found a second definition.
The first one really was crap. It was the state of being bored. So thanks, Google. Helpful, as ever.
So the more helpful, I think is this a Merriam-Webster one? So their definition is that boredom is the state of being weary and restless through lack of interest. And I think that lack of interest bit's the interesting bit, because that's pointing towards not being present to life, not being present to what's right in front of us. So for me, there is a great big key here. If you want to shift your experience, you want to shift your state, your starting point is considering how you're meeting life and how present are you at any one moment in time.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an amazing journey, because it's all well and good to say, if you just do these, just do this 10 minutes of mindfulness a day, then the rest of it will all solve itself, etc., etc. So it's a bit of a journey, learning to be present to our life, and it's actually impossible not to be here. It's the only place we're ever in. So the only thing that's ever getting in the way is thought, one way or another. And so that's a bit of a journey. And for some of us, we may have reasons why it's uncomfortable to be with ourselves. We might have unresolved things from the past. We might not have ever done that before. We might have not known it was on the menu. Many people are afraid to spend time with themselves. Like and that's to be taken lightly. And we're not going to be able to cover all the different things that can help somebody learn to truly know it's safe to be in the present moment and to be with yourself. But without doubt, worth considering is the fact that, is it the thing that's boring, or is it coming from inside of me? And like, well, spoiler alert, like, it's only ever coming from inside of you, which is why one person can do something and it can be the most exhilarating thing ever, and why another person is bored out of their brains, right? So I've noticed in particular that if I make it a practice to be present during something, suddenly it can take on a completely different flavor. And that's kind of when I was joking around with like all that stuff at the beginning, and saying that, interestingly, a lot of the stuff that when I was a kid, and there may be a whole host of, there's going to be a bunch of other reasons for that, but one of the reasons is that I just wanted to be on my Game Boy. I just wanted to be like, I didn't want to be that. There was resistance in me. But funnily enough, when we learn to drop resistance and let the snow globe settle, fall out of the thinking in our head, it's not even a doing thing, it's just and then allowing that, it's our natural state, then suddenly things that we could have found very boring can become exhilarating, like you said. Because the truth is, like, blades of grass, leaves, walking in nature, everything is fascinating. Like, everything is fascinating. Like, the fact that you're where you are, doing the things that you're doing, we're just so numb to the wonder of what's going on around us, and reawakening that again is a really great way of moving through some of that boredom and bringing life back into life, right?
Yeah, well, this is exactly how life becomes bigger, how life becomes more exciting, more exhilarating, richer. So I know boredom, like there's this connotation that comes along with boredom. Like I joked when we said about recording this one, you said something about, well, we haven't planned this one out. And I said, well, it might be really boring. It's just like that connotation of, oh, yawn.
Yeah.
But to me, boredom is like, it's one of those marvelous things that has the potential to, like, the other side of the coin is just, it's so vast and expansive and exciting and thrilling. Just as you said, like, everything is fascinating. All of those things, you made me laugh about the things as a kid, because funnily enough, one of the things that my mum used to do to me was drag me around old houses. Like, drag me around old houses and look at things. And, like, oh,
and you
God,
fucking love it now, don't you?
I fucking love it. And I
Told
do
you.
It to my
You
kids.
do it to
Yes.
kids.
Payback. It's
That's what I
payback
mean.
time. But funnily enough, so this weekend just gone, I went to a local stately house with.
Was it National Trust?
Yes, it was your old.
I'm a member.
Ground, mate. It was.
I'm a member.
It was
My old son, Wimpole Hall.
It was only bloody Wimpole.
No freaking way.
And I'll tell you what, I've never been in the bloody house. The reason I've never been in the house, and I've only ever been in the grounds and the farm, is because the kids have never wanted to go in the house, and the kids have always been too little for the house, and I've always had a bloody pushchair, many a reason. So my friend and I took our kids collectively down to Wimpole, and her boy is coming up 11, and he said, "Oh, can we go in the house?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" I didn't say fuck yeah. I said, "Yeah, yeah, let's go." I said, "Yeah, let's go," because I was like, "Shit, I've never been in the house before," and the fact that he really wanted to go in, I was like, "That's really cool." Like, and he was so fascinated with the whole thing. And he's pointing stuff out to me. Now, the other kids are just tearing around the place, like, just as fast as they can, looking for the ghosts. Where's the basement? Where's the dungeon? All of this business. But it struck me how I was walking through this room, and I had this moment of, like when you are fully present, you soak something in. And I was like, wow, that word that you said, like, fascinating. I was stood there going like, this is fascinating. Also, why do people need so many couches? There's a lot of couches in there. Like, you can only, like, if you imagine living in that building, like, well, I can only sit in one room at a time. So why do I need so many rooms and so many couches? Anyway, that's a side note. But the whole thing, it just had a really different flavor to it than being dragged around as a kid. But this is this whole point about how you meet stuff and your level of openness to experience. So if we choose to resist things, and by the way, I'm not saying that we're not discerning. I'm not saying that we fill our lives with stuff that doesn't interest us. What I'm saying is, how do you know it doesn't interest you if you don't allow yourself to be open to it? So for me, that the other side of the coin of boredom is just like this. It's just this huge expanse of possibility. And I find that so exciting that you could, it's just like this adventure of discovery. There's just so much potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, preferences are awesome. They seem to be like a really wonderful expression of human, etc. But a lot of the time we're maybe not even expressing a true preference. We might be expressing like unconscious resistance or whatever it might
beliefs,
be.
Somebody else's preference.
Do you know what else is awesome about going to National Trust properties? You can have a scone. Oh.
I was just about to bang my head on the microphone there.
Do you not like scones?
I thought you were going to, for our southern friends.
Well, at least you don't. I mean, well, I don't know.
You said scone. You were talking northerner now.
Do you know what? There's some weird shit going on. Robin, I've become. Do you know what I said the other day? I said I'm basically becoming a mixture of Northern and American, which is fine. Obviously, it's no problem. But it's amazing how you pick these things up. I say things like, I said the other day it was the fall. I didn't even know what I'd said. Yeah, I said it, and I was like, for a minute, I was like, it's autumn. It's not,
I say that though. I kind of get into the Americanisms.
Well, no, that's fine. But I mean, we hang out with a lot of lovely American people, so it's pretty like, that's going to happen.
We do. I still can't say Maryland though.
The other day, there was a whole thread underneath one of my TikToks where someone But someone put, this is great. It's the best comment ever. It says, I don't think I can find it.
Again,
no, it said,
they?
I like, I mean, they're always like up there, aren't they? It said, oh, I like your content, mate, but you can stop saying right. You're not American. Because I'm always saying like right, or, probably I need some media training.
How do you know that was their voice?
I don't. Well, how did you, I mean, yeah, I didn't. I don't know. But it was quite funny actually, because I, underneath I said, yeah, fair enough, and then took the mickey out myself, and it's one of those things. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we I always get this wrong. I always want to say diverge or divulge, but it's digress. We've been here before, haven't we? We've been here before.
Many a time. Well,
sorry.
What we were saying was, or where we were headed with this was, there's many an opportunity opened up by boredom. Was that? That's a bit like my son puppet. At the minute. Oh God, here we go again. Another digression. My son has got this thing. He's been watching too much Bluey, and he keeps doing this thing with his arm like this, going, "I'm like a mongoose."
I wondered where that had come from.
Oh yeah, he's done it to you before, hasn't he? Yeah, I'm like a mongoose. Yeah, it's off of Bluey.
Oh right, I didn't even know who Bluey was the other day until you put that picture in the Facebook
Bluey.
Group.
It's awesome. And in fact, if you are a fan or you're not a fan, watch the last episode of series 3 called Fairy Tale, because it's all about the 80s, and it's so good, so good.
Sorry,
so there are many an opportunity opened up by boredom, and so I had a little list of the things, and we've touched on the first one a bit, and this is this idea of learning how to let go. So people will say, oh, I know I need to let go, but how do I do that then? And what I'm suggesting is that by allowing ourselves to, in inverted commas, be bored, this whole idea of allowing ourselves to be, that's the ground, that's the playground to learn how to let go.
Yeah, just be bored for a bit.
See what happens.
Yeah.
I had a client. I wonder whether she's listening to this. She'll know who she is. She used to say to me, I can't remember if she used to say that she was bored.
Probably.
She did use that word.
Bored? Is this in your sessions?
No,
I'm so bored.
Cheeky git.
I mean, I can, fair enough.
No. No, she had a very busy life. Working mum, 2 lovely boys, lots of energy, lots of stuff going on. And she was the kind of person that loved hit workouts, and she needed her dopamine, hit workouts, and I got her into cold water therapy. She loved it. And so I think removing alcohol for her, we were talking earlier on about the disruption of your dopamine receptors and that so that she's going through that recalibration, and she wouldn't allow herself to be bored. To her, it was too frustrating. And so what I kept tasking her with was just sit there, just allow yourself. And I think she used to hate the homework from me. But that was it. It was go and sit with it. Surrender to it. Let it be. Allow it. Find out what comes, like whatever comes up there is there for you uniquely, and it's a gift. But it can be, granted, it can be very, very hard, because what people are fighting against is that resistance. But what happens with resistance? We perpetuate suffering. So this is the antidote. It's allowing your experience to be as it is. And that discomfort is where growth and potential comes from.
Cool.
So let go, people.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think we spoke about this the other day, that also the language that we use around this is like, it's kind of let be. I think these days, like let go is a bit of, that has this idea that it's supposed to go somewhere. Like let be is like it will like nothing's permanent. It's always going to move around. So if you let it be, then it's kind of like it will sort of like go when it wants, rather than trying to let go.
Yeah, I think the language here and choosing the words that are meaningful to you is important. because I will often just say to myself, like, relax, like, relax. What's that off of? Relax. I don't know, I'll figure it out. But that the sentiment is the same. It's a releasing, a relax and a release.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, you got to find what works for you. There's all of a sudden in the last like I don't know, month or so. The thing that I do in the morning is I wake up and I do something that takes me to a place of like wonderment. I'm like, yeah, I want to do something that reminds me how fucking amazing the world is. Doesn't matter what it is. Like it could be a meditation, it could be anything. It could just be sitting on the sofa and going back to some deep mystical experience I had. It could be, it could be anything. I'm like, oh, that's really amazing right now. I love that. That's really powerful to me. So, but for whatever reason, that just arrived for me. So I think, yeah, with all this thing, with language or like whatever we're doing, there's something to be said for like trying all these different things out. Then sometimes things just turn up. Do them. Trust that. Trust that stuff.
Yeah. This is a being guided by your nose situation at the same time, but like early doors, it's always going to feel more. What's the word I'm looking for? More. I hate the word clunky, but it's because of the needing to be deliberate with it. You're noticing, it's that awareness thing. You're noticing more what's going on, but you're always being guided, so you can trust that. And so the other sides of the coin. So we talked about letting go. The other things that boredom opens up opportunity for is like creative endeavors, creative energy, creativity, which is a wondrous thing. Particularly, I think we're all creative in very, very different ways. And as a kid, I always considered myself really creative. Always. I think everybody is. I think we suppress it. And so finding whatever your outlet is for your own creative energy to flow is a really important thing to bring the majesty of life back in, after being absent for so long through drinking, to find the place where you can express yourself creatively, or the activity where you can express yourself creatively, is a really, really marvelous thing.
Yeah, I think probably broadening our horizons and understanding around creativity is powerful, because you're sort of like, we're all creating in every single moment. Everything we say, like in the middle of this podcast right now, we're literally creating something that didn't exist before. And wherever you are, whether you see yourself as like a creative, I mean, to me, this isn't about whether you're drawing or painting or whatever. This is about your relationship with life and understanding that you have a whole ton of agency, and even in selecting how you choose your perceptions and the choices that you make and what circuits you want to operate. I just read the most incredible book that was a lady's sort of journey through stroke and then recovery, and talking about how she realized as all the circuits came back on, as she learned them again, she realized how much power she had to engage in circuits or not. And one thing in particular is, what's really interesting is I know we don't have a huge amount of time here, so I'll keep this really brief, but from a physiological perspective, a lot of the stuff that moves into our sensory system has a time span of about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So if you're talking about anxiety or anger, etc. Now, here's what's really interesting, right? If those circuits get lit up, different parts of the limbic system and all sorts of like wonderfully beautiful circuits that operate in your brain and through your body. Often if you feel them fully, they will express themselves and then they will transform, they will change form within 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Often, if they're persisting beyond that, what we've innocently done is introduce the narrative to them. So we've got all, we've gone all, you know, sort of like, what's the word, like kind of logical, or we've brought like the prefrontal cortex online. We've tried to explain a feeling with thinking, even though the feeling came from the limbic system. It came through us because of, you know, for whatever reason. And a lot of the time, if you're just experiencing that, you can choose to lay down a circuit. Like you can, I mean, this morning I was like feeling really anxious. It was weird. So I went and sat on the sofa and I sort of was with it. And I was just got really curious about it. And then I chose to drop that circuit and move into a different scenario. That to me is creating. Like you can create that, and you can create any internal world or narrative that you like. And the more you bring in your ability to see your internal biases and what's going on, and the fact that you're much bigger than the thoughts that you know have thought again and again and again, and you know all these like automatic negative thoughts and all these kinds of things, like then you're in much more of a creation space. So it's not just about painting, right? It's about so much more.
Painting's good though.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like it might all be about painting. We're all different. Well, hey, look, we've got a couple of minutes, so I wonder how we'd what do you want to say to wrap this one up, buddy?
I think that there's definitely, I hate saying there's a part 2 because it's not a part 2. There's a continuation on this. There's another part that I want to talk to, so we'll save that for another episode. But it's, suffice to say, it's all about our growth, and this is an entry point to that. So we can choose to stay in the old paradigm, or we can decide that we are going to be open and we're going to allow ourselves to shift. And that shifting is going to feel uncomfortable. We are going to experience discomfort because by the nature of what we're doing, it's different. But this is why, and I must repeat myself over and over and over again with people that are either in our groups or on coaching calls, but whenever we have that feeling of discomfort, it really is to be celebrated, because it means that there is, it might be the funniest looking gift in the world, it might be wrapped up in very strange wrapping paper, but there is something wonderful and wondrous inside of there. And just allowing ourselves to turn towards it and to welcome it, to accept it. So much happens on the other side of that. But we have to practice this, because we're so accustomed to turning the other way. We're so accustomed to denying our experience, to suppressing our feelings. So when boredom comes up for you, use it as a teacher, use it as a gift, because it really, really is.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'll just I think this kind of is on the same track, but something I've been doing recently. It's been coming to me more and more naturally in a way that it didn't used to. But whatever's going on in my life, if I find myself getting a bit overwhelmed or stressed or joyful, like whatever it is, in those moments, I just remind myself, what a gift. Like, how lucky am I to be here experiencing this? Even if it's grief, even if it's sadness, even if it's like, how amazing to be part of this like mystery and this incredible thing. And yeah, I think it can suddenly shift something in an instant. It can just be like, wow, bring us back into the present moment, and then back into to our kind of like right brain consciousness, which is a lot more like a lot less narrative and a lot more like and a lot more chill, which is always cool. Right, team?
Should we end on an om?
At risk of boring you.
Do you want an om?
Are you going to go on then? Om us out.
Are you going to om?
No, I'm going to let you on.
Are you not going to om with me?
No.
Charming.
Oh, that was a funky arm. I like that. God, do you know the amount of anyway, that's a fun thing to go play with. The next time you're bored, do some oms. See what that does. You might be surprised. Right, team. Love you all.
Latest taters.
See you soon. Mwah.